back, everybody. We hope that you enjoyed that time to dive deeper into an article. We are now going to do some sharing back of what you learned and what you discussed. I want to start with Breakout Room 1 and their article about, or their video about Burmese migrant in Thailand.
I can go. Do you want us to share what the content what we actually watched, as well as like what we discussed?
Yes, please do give a summary, like a brief summary of what you watched, because the others of us didn't get to see that. But if you're interested, of course, the links are in that same document.
I can give the summary if you want, Ajit. Sorry, I didn't realize you meant one because we were breakout room 2. Okay. Anyways, so basically this breakout room, we watched a video of a Burmese migrant to Thailand. So it actually went through kind of his story and the hardships that he faced. And he actually now he grows mushrooms in Thailand and sells them. So that's kind of how he's making his living there. And then Ajit, you can go with the observations.
Yeah, so the stuff we kind of discussed was mainly about like the conditions. Obviously, he's growing mushrooms. It's more like a rural prospect. So we can kind of see that reflected in the video and his lifestyle. It was cool because it is a success story. He did go from having difficulty adjusting to life in Thailand, living on the border, and then eventually building his own house and having a family and providing a life for them. So that was pretty cool. It felt very similar to like the traditional like optimistic immigrant success story, but you could still see a lot of difficulties along the way. So I think that was really cool. We also just kind of considered barriers when like immigrating, like the elderly, the sick, like moving a whole family. That was kind of where our discussion ended. If anyone wants to jump in with any last thoughts we had on that.
Yeah, we also talked about the wealth gap a little. So in the video, we got to see the working conditions that the Burmese migrant had, and they weren't poor conditions. He owned, I think, the place himself, but it wasn't like something like a workshop you would see in the United States. And it was kind of interesting because he brought mushrooms, I think, to his family, and they were building construction to these very nice houses. And it was just a really interesting contrast to see how, I think Ajit brought up, like the majority of migrant workers live versus how a small percentage lives as well.
Matthew, did you have any thoughts on the video when you watched it?
I think he summed it up pretty well, Ajit. I think if you're interested in this video, if Group 1's description kind of caught your interest, then you know where to find that link. It's at the top of our Breakout Rooms document, and I'd suggest you give it a watch. We could now move on to Breakout Room 2, which was, I think we'll hear from Offer first about a summary of what they talked about.
Yeah, so we read our first article because we all read through it for a bit, but we don't really have too much time to discuss, but we still got a little bit through. So basically, the article was about basically this landfill in Mesot that it has very poor conditions, and it is kind of known as this place where a lot of humanitarian projects, it's kind of like a graveyard for them because a lot of them aren't able to they just want to help for a little bit. And it is kind of interesting to see they have a lot of different outlooks. Like there's one man who lives there and he has been staying there for a couple of years, and it's kind of interesting to see how the community members see him. Not a lot of people like him, some of them do. And it is just based off of what these humanitarian projects have done. Even at one point, I think there was like a little kid who was jealous that he wasn't able to get like a bag of rice from this man, but this other project or nonprofit was able to give everyone else some. So it's kind of interesting to see these like different outlooks and stuff. And it also kind of talked about how media had a really big influence on it, because it was saying how if you see a little boy in front of a landfill, what emotion does that strike in people? So obviously that brings more people to want to help them, but is it necessarily a good thing? Because some of the community members were not very happy about it because it made it feel like it became more popular. And so that's a little quick synopsis. It was a lot of information. Yeah. I am gonna call on Simya because she had a little interesting fact that that she was talked about. So
Yeah, so in the article, they kind of talked about how there was like a little philanthropic turf war, and like Afra said, like the location was like a graveyard for like a bunch of dead projects, and like the main reason behind that is because like there's so many organizations that go in and their like long-term goal isn't to really help the community. They kind of want to use that landfill as like a photo opportunity to like make their own narrative. And yeah, that's basically what I shared.
And that's very globe many in for us to consider is the use of images or stories by those individuals who live in these conditions, and what we're doing to make sure that we're emphasizing their stories and uplifting their voices in this interaction. Um, this article about the king of the trash dump has been something that Globe chapters have visited year after year. His name is Fred Stockwell, and he is an iconic character in Mesot. In fact, he lives at a long-term guest house, the same house that the Grow interns would stay at. So we've gotten glimpses of Fred Stockwell and like this enigma of a character walking out, getting in his pickup truck, going to pick up kids, or to help out wherever he's needed. So very curious just to see that example play out in Mesot, in an area that we also inhabit and work closely with. Did anyone else have any thoughts on article from room 2? Seeing none, I will pass it off to Weston for room 3.
Yes. Okay. So in room or breakout room 3, we had 2 articles that we looked at, kind of skimmed through. One highlighted the effect COVID-19 has had in general on the migrant workers and how poor their conditions are getting, how much worse they're getting than they already were. And then the other article discussed how the Thailand government is actually giving work permits to migrant workers, either extending their permits or giving permits to previously undocumented workers in order to curb the spread of COVID-19. And basically the logic behind that would be that if the workers stay in Thailand and work there, they aren't going to be out spreading COVID to different countries, as if they were to maybe go back to Myanmar. So that's kind of the rundown of the articles we talked about. One of our discussion points was we wanted to talk about the how much the inequality of wealth in Thailand made the conditions worse for COVID-19. And what we kind of talked about was that in the totem pole of Thailand, these migrant workers are extremely low. They are pretty much like the last thought in many people's minds And when the wealth really resides at the very tippy top of this totem pole, the individuals at that bottom of the totem pole, they're going to be such an afterthought. They're not going to get any support from employers or governments. They are going to suffer tremendously. And we thought about ways that this could be combated. And one of the ideas that got brought up was that people with money should kind of have this built-in responsibility to create some jobs for the migrant workers. Obviously, if they have the money, if they have that power, it seems like the humane thing to do to provide work for people that need it. We also thought that if one thing that could help the migrant workers is if they have skills or trades when they cross the border, that obviously is going to make them more valuable to employers. But then again, it's a little difficult to just say, oh, you like, if you're going to come into our country, you better have a skill. Well, that's not fair to say at all. They're trying to escape civil war and political unrest. They shouldn't have to worry about developing a skill or trade. But then the last few things that we kind of brought up, not so much something we talked about, but just kind of questions that got posed, is that the idea that the Thai government is giving documentation to people to work, it was a little obscure in the article because pretty much as soon as this registration period was over for this program, they were discussing, getting right back to prosecuting and deporting people who are undocumented. And we kind of questioned how fair really is that. And we also questioned how fair it is for the government to make these immigrants pay for their own health checks in order to get documented, which can, I don't remember the exact number, but it wasn't pocket change. And they really needed, and we kind of thought if the government's going to make immigrants get a health check in order to become documented, the least they can do is provide a cheaper way to do it or pay for it altogether. So that's breakout room 3. If anyone had anything to add to that, go for it.
Well, thank you, Weston, for that. That was a great breakdown of your articles, and yet again, another example of how difficult, what barriers exist for those living in Thailand looking for work and looking for legal status. And then just my thought on that is, what benefits does this group of people deserve? Because they are responsible for a lot of Thailand's recent economic success. But, I'm getting now with discussing Breakout Room 4's article, and this article was one that dived deeper into Myanmar's non-formal education program. So non-formal education is a program that aims to educate students who are known to be out of school. So these are typically children who are working at an early age, at a very young age. They might be performing work that is perilous, that is mundane, that is just mind-numbingly exhausting and demanding. So it's often difficult for these students to go attend formal education, which is why the importance of non-formal education programs, migrant learning centers within Thailand, for example, operates SAW School, which utilizes the non-formal education curriculum from Myanmar. So we were discussing education as it relates to the children of these migrant families, and that's what's explored in our article. I'll actually throw it over to Naga for her thoughts.
Yeah, so in our breakout room, we talked about like the article, which delved into the stories of like 3 students. And I know like one of our members brought to our attention the prevalence of child labor. So like one student specifically, Mo, he was 13 years old, and before school he sells food to like drivers on highways, but he still has to go to class after selling food all day, even though he's like emotionally and physically exhausted. And like I know Anish brought up the like the maturity of understanding that he has like limited options if he doesn't like attend this program. So he doesn't have to do manual labor his whole life. And we also talked a little bit about how one of the girls worked in a factory, and she had a lot of like stress headaches and like emotional stress from that. And one of the heads of the program talked about how a lot of the girls get married before puberty. So this program is like a good way for girls to continue their education and work hard to achieve their dreams. And in connection to SAW, we also talked about how SAW has shelters where education is provided to the Burmese students. So, yeah.
Awesome. That was a great summary of what we discussed. Because we're coming up to the end of the time of partnerships presentation, I just wanted to give one last chance. If you have questions, to feel free to raise your hand or type them in the chat. Your final chance to ask us questions about the Myanmar refugee and migrant crisis. Okay, seeing none, I thank you all for your time with listening to our partnerships presentation today. You have access to all those articles in the breakout rooms document, and I'll share my screen for co-pres to end our meeting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Partnerships. That was an amazing presentation. So thank you so much for putting that together for us. As always, we're going to kind of end with a collective breath. So if anybody has any thoughts or quotes or something inspirational they want to share with everybody that we can take a breath on, now is your time to shine. Okay, so I see Harnor put in the chat, radical simply means grasping things at the root. And Naga said, stop measuring days by degree of productivity and start experiencing them by degree of presence. I think those are both awesome quotes. So with that, if you can, unmute yourself so we can take a breath together. And you can either close your eyes or soften your gaze. And then take a breath in and out. Awesome. All right, Matthew, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, we have a few quick announcements to make before we go into committee time. All right, so first things first, we do have our next Chai and Chat. This will be with Kirthana, who's one of our campaigns directors, and Brooke, who's the communications director. Their Chai and Chat is on this Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. So we will be sending the link to that Chai and Chat in our recap email tomorrow. So if you want to go to it, please check it out. And we are now less than 1 month away from benefit dinner. So this is super exciting. We're in the last few weeks of getting everything prepared. The save the dates were sent out last Monday. We had hoped to have our ticketing open by Friday, but it's a little bit delayed. So it should be available and open no later than this Wednesday. So please, 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 if you know any friends, family members, professionals, or even professors that you know might be interested in coming to this event, please feel free to share it with them. You'll probably be getting a bunch of emails with invitations. Feel free to forward it to anyone that you know that might be interested. And of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out to myself or Parnika and Tanner, our benefit dinner coordinators. With that, that's all the major announcements we have. As always, we will be posting a recording of this meeting on YouTube. If you want to be censored, send either myself or Maria a quick chat and we will make sure that you're not in the video. Coffee with the co-president is always open. So if you want to just sit down and have a quick 30-minute chat with myself and Maria and ask us questions, anything like that, you're more than welcome to do so. We already talked about Chai and Chat, and we are still doing IG takeovers. So if you're interested in doing an IG takeover on a Tuesday sometime this semester, reach out to our communications coordinator, Brooke, and she will find a time that works for you. And co-president elections are in 2 weeks. We are releasing the e-board. We're releasing to e-board the application this evening. So if you are interested in who will be your co-president for the next year, please make sure you come to that meeting in 2 weeks. That's when they will be sharing their platforms and you will have an opportunity to vote for who you want to see as the next co-presidents. And yes, thank you, Maria, for boosting that in the chat. The next takeover is this Tuesday with Elizabeth. All right, and I will go ahead and open up the committee breakout rooms. So you all can jump into there. You have about 15 minutes and e-board starts at 8. Again, all of you are more than welcome to join us. So